Welcome back to this show, The Bible Journey. Thank you very much for sticking to your television set or to your YouTube channel or whatever other channel you are using to watch us. We are in the book of Leviticus, chapter 12, the ritual after childbirth. And the Lord has said specifically and very categorically that if a woman gives birth to a male child, she shall be unclean for 7 days. And on the 8th day, the child shall be circumcised. And then in verse 4, he continues in saying that she shall then continue in the blood of her purification 33 days. She shall not touch anything that is hallowed, nor come into the sanctuary until the day of her purification are fulfilled. So, the pastors, you also recognize here that there is another 33 days of purification. I don't know what informs this, if we've made any discovery in terms of health to inform such a decision by God.
Right. Some of these numbers or days, they really look random and arbitrary when you read it at face value. This totals to about 40 days.
Yeah, 33 plus 7.
Right, yeah. And she shall continue in the blood of her purification. And I love that. It is a process of purification that is going on. You see, Nick, childbirth, as we shared, it is a happy thing. In fact, God is the one who created that. In Genesis 1:28, he says, be fruitful, and multiply, give birth, fill the earth. Yeah. So that is why it will be against, it will be contradicting God's word if we see that God is demonizing this childbirth. Yet after the fall, childbirth became no longer fun. When you read in Genesis 3:16, that curse when it was given there.
In pain or in sorrow.
Right, yeah. That is right, yeah. So Genesis 3:16.
Right. It says, to the woman he said, I'll greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you.
Right, yeah. Now that word sorrow, it also has connotations of shame, of humiliation, right? It's not an easy process. In the village, when women are giving childbirth, men disappear. Even the strongest men, they disappear. They run away. And
Pastor Nyaga is saying, no, I can't disappear.
Yeah, well, we can, because you have the doctors here in the city. They are going to aid you. Nowadays, we stand in the theater and we receive our kids. You see how they are being brought out from the womb, and all that. Yeah. But it is a process. It's a painful, humiliating process. Why? Because the sin problem. So it comes with a lot of baggage. In fact, it is the psalmist who says in Psalms 51, I don't know if it's 5 or 6 there, right?
5.
Right, yeah. We are woven. We are woven, it says, in impurity. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin my mother conceived me. So I am trying to talk about the purification process. It says that she shall continue in the blood of her purification. After this painful, sorrowing, humiliating, process of childbirth because of sin, she needs time to regain. She needs time to rest. I wish all my fellow viewers, especially our sisters, will now start appreciating and celebrating this particular chapter.
And by the way, what does health talk about that?
Even before I come to health, maybe Pastor John or Pastor Nyaga can speak about the health element. But for me, what I want to appreciate is this. Do you know a Hebrew's life was engrossed in worship, in the sanctuary, in the tabernacle?
Yeah.
As we have seen all these offerings, of necessity, I don't see a person finishing a day, a week, before going to offer some sacrifice. So imagine a mother was just delivered, but still you have to go to give a peace offering. But now you see, for 40 days or for 80 days, if you give birth to a girl child, you are spared of all these obligations. I should hear an amen.
Yeah, actually, no, I wanted to add. You know, when we were reading
Right.
chapter 15, if you look closely, ladies
Right.
should be able to celebrate. Rather than
Exactly.
look at this verse, they look at this chapter as a curse,
Right,
it needs to
right.
be. We all know how women were held by the Jews.
Right.
They were more like, they were under the men.
I think we need to first of all read verse 5 because I see you are going into verse 5 more.
Verse 5 of what?
Of verse 5 of 12.
enjoyment.
No, just before.
enjoy
What I'm explaining is just before verse 5.
Okay.
I'm talking about the advantage.
Right.
A lady was supposed to do everything, household chores and everything. She was basically like, she was burdened. She did not have a say. But for this particular time of birth, remember like when you read chapter 15, nobody should touch her. She cannot touch anything else. All she's supposed to do, because if she will
Right.
touch you, you'll have to be unclean all the day till
She
evening.
cooks for you in the house.
If she cooks for you, everything is unclean. So what do you
I would
think is
rather
happening?
cook.
Right.
She's totally free to be able to recuperate, to heal. Her postpartum time should be able to be time to reflect on what she's done, because she's brought forth a child. She's brought forth, she's partaking in God's creation in real sense. After that, God rested. And therefore, this lady also,
Has
it
to
was
rest.
given time for her to be able to rest. Imagine that rest. So indeed, it's not a bad, don't take it as a bad thing when God says she's impure. It was God protecting her through laws that men observed so much that she can be able to rest for 40 days. Our government here gives you, I think, 90 days.
Yeah, 3 months.
I think in verse 5 now that
Now,
comes out.
now verse 5 is now where we come
Yes,
in.
but
before
if
we
she
say boys and girls.
but if she bears a female child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in the customary impurity, and she shall continue in the blood of her purification 66 days. Yeah, so it's
66
twice.
plus 14, yes.
Yeah,
It's
plus
80
14.
days.
Plus
So that's
14, 80 days. Yes.
So the 3 months, working days.
Yeah, and you are still talking before I come to Pastor Nyaga. Or are you done? Okay, let's move to Pastor Nyaga then. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to totally agree with the views of Pastor John. And again, remembering that we are talking about these healthy issues. And God is not a human being. You know, He's a creator. He knows our systems.
Right.
He knows what we need. Even when they are not doctors, He's the greatest physician.
Amen.
And He is able to supply remedies that will keep you health and supporting your life. I couldn't appreciate this until when I got a woman in my life.
Right.
And I've witnessed her giving birth twice. I now agree with God that, and I can imagine those days without doctors, you know, this kind of sophisticated, you know, scientific ventures into health issues. You can imagine what was happening those days.
In a desert.
In a desert again, actually. We are still on a mountain or something like this. And I see a God who looks at a woman and the burden that she has to bring forth humanity, says, I have to take care of this woman. But you see, people will understand things that scare them. I think God is a little bit smart. If God would have said, no, when a woman gives birth, please give her time to rest. No one would have given her time to rest.
The husband comes and says, that, woman, where is my food?
You have rested enough. Actually, you've been sleeping all that long.
Right.
A whole week you're still resting.
Sure.
Yeah, but remember I said that, you know, customary. It, without, you know, God introducing Himself to these people, the Jews had their customs, the pagans had their customs. And these were part of the custom. There were a lot of rules and regulations governing impurity and uncleanness. So, and no one would want to mingle with uncleanly because it was so expensive for one to become unclean, and especially men. No man wanted to become unclean because women were looked as being unclean because of their monthly issues of blood. So when God says she is unclean, they understand we need to keep off. And that was a sure way of giving this woman enough time to heal.
Right.
I don't know. I think, as John said, women out there should be celebrated. This should be the text for the women. They should pay more attention to this.
Yeah.
But again, also to appreciate one more point, that the cleanness, the you know, the fluids from a woman's body after the delivery take time to clear off.
They continue flowing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you're not careful, even the woman herself, she can be contaminated with those fluids. It calls for a very high level of cleanliness, hygiene.
Right.
And during those days, unlike these days when you have so many things that you can use to keep yourself clean, there were so much limitations.
That's right.
And isolation then would be a sure way of making this woman, you know, when you're alone, you can easily take care of yourself. But when people are mingling with you, you are paying attention to so many people, you'll forget the finer details of taking care of yourself. So this kind of an isolation was not actually a negative isolation. It was not like someone that suffered leprosy. So let's throw that person away because it's going to contaminate us.
No.
But it was a positive step for God to give this person and the community, the family members, one, to prevent any occurrence of diseases, or in case of any disease, to make sure it doesn't spread to other people.
That's right.
And then number three, to make sure that this woman heals without a lot of stress.
Wow. Wow, Pastor, and you know, it's, you know, twice for a
Right.
girl child. And so you are saying that it's just okay, yeah?
It's still very fair. I don't understand all the intricacies, but we know even from health science, you know, like for a woman's, they're open. They have an open digestive system, rather reproductive system. We have a closed one.
Yeah, we understand the problem. We understand.
Right, yeah, that is true. They are more susceptible to, you know, infections.
Yes.
They're much more vulnerable than we are. I won't pretend to understand everything, but I trust God even in this. And I bet the healthcare practitioners
Can agree.
to check on these principles. They will agree with God. They'll be amazed. They'll be amazed at this, yeah. So, you know, once again, this process of bringing forth life, it is a process to be respected, to be honored, to be protected. Let me tell you something, Nick. Our society, even the modern day society, even the Western, where, you know, still the aspect of equality, they almost think they are there. Not yet. Still, the truth is that there is a lot of, you know, downtrodden on the women. And in my culture, there were lots of little rules, you know, which were put. And they will look so annoying until you understand the why behind it. Then you're like, oh, okay. In a questioning society like ours, where we question everything, I think the best thing is to be what? Okay, you know what? Thus saith the Lord.
Yeah, just
right,
leave it there.
Just leave it there.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, just on why a female child would make the mother double
Unclean
impure.
yeah.
It's from the same logic that she has given birth to a woman. Naturally, by their customs, a woman was unclean because of the monthly issues of blood. But also, I think what Pastor Dan is trying to bring out, I think that medics are already into it. It's only that maybe it's not so much spoken about.
We might
I have a
need to
privilege of having a girl and a boy child. And what amazed me, when we got a girl child, and now I have a boy child, from the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, teach you how to clean these infants.
right.
And the cleaning of a girl child is different from a cleaning of a boy child.
And it takes more time. Eh?
It takes more time. You're asked to pay more attention to a girl child. When you're changing their diapers and all those things, there is a way you clean her, not the way you clean a boy child.
That's right.
I also was meant to understand these infants also suffer from UTIs. They take on UTIs or what?
Yes, yes, it's UTI.
Yes,
very
yeah,
more easily,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yeah. And so it tells you that you have given birth to a woman.
Oh, right.
She is an infant, she's 1 day old, but that's a woman, it's a complete woman. And so, and I want to believe this is why that God would say, let those women be impure for these days because she is now taking care of two women, taking care of herself and taking care of another woman. Of course, again, and there are those who have argued there are possibility of traces of blood, tiny blood issues from the reproductive organ of an infant girl when she's born. Those could be rare cases, but again, God doesn't assume anything. That is take chances, So I'm looking at it from that, and I also want to echo Pastor Dan, daring the medics out there. Can they come out strongly on this?
And tell us at least, try and prove this. Verse 6, time is not on our side. 3 verses here I want us to look at. When the days of her purification are fulfilled, whether for a son or a daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb of the first year as a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then he shall offer it before the Lord and make atonement for her, and she shall be clean from the flow of her blood. This is the law for her who has borne a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she may bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as a burnt offering and the other as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for her, and she will be clean. This is what Mary did.
Yes.
That's right.
Luke chapter 2, 22, 24. The most beautiful thing for me, you've been on isolation. Nobody can touch you. You can't do anything. You can't touch. If you touch something, it becomes unclean. Somebody touches you, it becomes unclean. Until after 40 days or after these 80 days, what do? The first thing this child is exposed to, and the mother, is to the Ark of the Covenant, to the temple, to the priest. That is the first thing that happens.
To worship.
Introduced to worship. After that much isolation, you will maybe say, let's try out something else. But the first thing that you do, this child will be introduced to God. Let me just put it like that. The mother will make a sacrifice for her and for this and for the child. For me, that was just wonderful. What is now that explains why the Israelites were so much into God every now and then. Why? Because if the isolation is because of what God said. The first thing they get introduced to is what God has said. They offer like something like a sin offering. That is what it says. And then the priest, it says, she shall bring to the priest a lamb of the first year as a burnt offering. And then, all that picture tells you how childbirth was regarded. It was not regarded as a sin, rather, but it was regarded as something that is influenced by the laws of God. So much that you wanted to present this child to God immediately. Before anything else, before you introduce anything,
The first thing
this child was introduced to worship. In real sense, an offering. That is like prayer. It's like dedicating this child to God, telling God, I just want to say thank you. I was not okay, now I'm okay. I was childless, now I have a child, or something like that. So for me, that gives a whole lot of meaning to childbirth again.
Wow.
For mothers, it is a huge responsibility.
We should be doing that even today. That the first,
I think we do
the
that.
first, the first place the child visits is the church.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Because after a nursing mother leaves isolation like 3 months, normally we take the child for child dedication.
We should
Generally.
take.
Yeah, we should.
Because many don't do
We
that.
take them to the grandmothers first.
Yeah, they go to the mall.
To the mall to warm up.
That's right. Yeah.
Or for some
But
Ideally,
see now then the value of a mother. The mother should be the first one to introduce this child to God. Beyond anything else, before anything else. I just want to thank God. I'm also a mother. A father of a girl and a boy. I could be able to see the difference. But for me, I really wanted to introduce them to God first, to acknowledge how much God has done. After all, there are so many who will want even just to be able to go to the temple, let alone to present a child before the priest.
He's a dean of men.
Maybe what?
Yeah.
No, I have a daughter.
What you need to clear here is
Right.
verse 6. Verse
Yes.
6 does not mean when the days of our purification are fulfilled, whether for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb. It doesn't mean that if the days of purification are ending today, tomorrow she's going to the priest. Neither does it mean she could not get in touch with any other person until and unless she meets with the priest.
No. There are people who visit her.
Yeah, what this means, the next ritual
Right.
was in the temple.
Milestone. Right. Right.
Okay, yeah, I need to make that clarification. So that, and because I've seen also a lot of confusion with our ladies out there. There are those who, they will lock themselves in their house, they don't want to see anyone until when they go to church.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's happening
It's
even
even
today.
superstitious.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so,
right.
I mean, shouldn't be misunderstood.
No.
We're dealing with rituals here of purification. So there's a ritual that ends at the 8th day, another one begins at the 8th day. There's another one that ends at the 40th day,
Right.
another one begins. So it's an economy of rituals. But these rituals, they are aligned in a sequence form, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing that can happen in between one to the other.
No.
They're not linear.
They are not linear.
Pastor, as we wind
Right,
up now.
yeah. I really needed to add something also onto this, the aspect of sacrifice. I believe that right now, all our viewers, they are in tune with the mind of God. A desire for holiness, a desire for perfection, a desire for health. We have a big word, a big Hebrew word, which combines all this together. Shalom. Well-being. It's
Well-being.
health, it is prosperity, it is being okay with God, at peace and all that. Anything you think of, shalom. That is what God desires with his people. So all the chapters we are looking at, talking about clean and unclean, it is not saying that unclean is sin. No. It is like, to the extent that God desires. that
And
you
by
be
the way, it's
in
not
touch
a
with him.
negative term. It's a very positive.
It
from
should be.
what we have
It should
discussed.
be.
Yeah.
And the modern mind struggles with that, but we shouldn't struggle. Now, look at what this nursing mother does. She goes with a gift before the Lord. I find this very significant. We are living at a time where we love ourselves. A child's birthday party. And we pamper them, and I'm all for, our children should have the best. But that should be the attention. What has the child done? You're celebrating 1 year old. Somebody goes to Dubai and buys, $1,000 gift. The child doesn't even understand. And they forget the giver of the life. Look, this woman goes back to God with thanksgiving, with the gratitude. In my community, there is a term we loosely translate when a woman gives birth, translated to loosely as resting.
Even in my community.
Even in your community. Generally, like we'd ask you, as she rested, like has she found relief? Because during childbirth, a lady can even die together with the baby. Right, yeah. So it is life, but it can be death also. So a woman goes to the temple of the Lord, to the sanctuary, to give a thanksgiving offering, an offering to the Lord. So I really think we need to refocus. We need to help our children, especially in our generation, where children are becoming self-centered. Remind them, even during their birthdays, that it is about God, who is the giver of life. We thank him. We celebrate his goodness in our life.
Wow.
And the
Thank you,
atonement
thank you.
here is not for sin. She has not committed any sin.
No.
Yeah, because verse number 7 talks about atonement. So we may confuse it with what we found in chapter 1, or the burnt offering that were offered for atonement, forgiveness of sin. But this particular atonement is not for forgiveness of sin.
What is
It's
it
just for cleansing.
Flow cleansing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, we really appreciate it. It was a nice discussion. And I hope that our dear viewer, you have learnt much, especially concerning the rituals during and after childbirth. And it's so significant, it's so important, and I hope that we all appreciate. May God bless you. Until next time, shalom. Hello viewer and welcome to this show. This is the Bible Journey and the Holiness Season. Thank you very much for joining us on our discussion today. We are into the book of Leviticus and the chapter is 12. So welcome even as we continue with our discussion, of course, with my panelists here. You can see them. We have on my right hand side, we have Pastor Kabira Wakabira. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you.
And on my left hand side, we have Pastor Dan Abuya. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you, pleasure being
And
here.
also Pastor Peter Nyaga. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now, as we begin, let's have a word of prayer from Pastor Kabira.
Our gracious God in heaven, we just want to appreciate that you are involved in our lives right from conception all the way to the time we'll die. As we see how you put instructions that may enable childbirth, that may enable children to be able to have a safe environment, we ask that, Lord, you may help us to understand what was the motive behind it all, for we pray this in Jesus' name.
Amen. When children are born into the society, it is a gift and everybody is happy, but there are several issues that come with it. And today we are looking into that childbirth and what comes with it. Now we'll be, with the help of our pastors, we'll be trying to dig deep and understand what the Lord says concerning cleanliness and uncleanness during and after childbirth. Now, pastors, welcome to the discussion of the book of Leviticus, chapter 12, the ritual after childbirth. Now, the Bible starts by saying, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman has conceived and born a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean. Now, let's start by, first of all, appreciating the importance of children in the society. And I think it's such a wonderful gift. A married couple will always look forward into getting a child, Pastor Dan. Isn't it a good thing to have children in the society, especially that moment people would really enjoy?
One of the most beautiful moments, one of the sweetest moments in most couples' lives. There are a few unique couples who are okay, who even decide intentionally that we won't have children. That's okay also. They're still a complete family. But otherwise, it is true that majority of the families, majority of, any couple, one of their highest moments is, when they receive a newborn in their family. It is a happy moment.
Such a joyous moment.
It is such a joyous moment. And what we are looking at today is quite unique. And I'm sure that, all our viewers are like, okay, what exactly is this? I'm glad that today, through God's word, we get an answer to the seemingly, it almost seems like it is a sad moment
to get a child.
To get a child, but it's not so.
Yeah, and Pastor Kabira, in an African context, especially where we are from, you look at, children and the importance of them in the society or in a family, and the way they are used as a cementing factor in a marriage, and trying to look at all that joy, as Pastor is saying, and looking at the uncleanness. Now you wonder what is wrong here.
I just want to appreciate this Bible by putting this in context. We will be able to discuss later in what context is uncleanness. But what we are discussing is childbirth, not the child. The child is not unclean. The giving of birth, the process, is what brings uncleanness. The issue has not been about the children.
But the process or the product is as good as the process.
Yeah, the product and the process. Or for example, sugar. When it's, before sugar becomes something that people can consume, it goes through an entire process that is not nice. If you've ever looked at, if you ever get a chance to go to a factory, you will not like it.
Right.
But the product that comes out is perfectly okay. So I may be able to dissociate. And what God is trying here to do to us is to try and help us understand He does not have a problem with the children. As you can see, it's about the childbirth, the process, whatever happens in between, sometimes can bring issues. We'll discuss maybe in terms of health-wise. We'll discuss in terms of what happens even in the modern world, how it's handled. So the issue I want to appreciate from God here is about He wants us to be holy as He is holy. There are some things that may make you impure. As we said previously in one of the episodes about cleanness, what it means. Whatever you put in, whatever comes out of you can make you impure because of health reasons, it could be because of social reasons, it could be because of so many other reasons in therein. So here, the challenge is not the children, as you're saying in an African setting. We appreciate children. Even in our own African setting, we had rules and regulations concerning childbirth, where a child born, whether male or female, there were several instructions. Those days, people would follow them because they thought they were just rules. Until science has come to prove that there should be regulations concerning this and that. A boy child and a girl child, there's a difference between this and between that. So in the context, it's like God was ahead of our times, let me say like that, by giving us instructions that prevented disaster or something about being able to occur to children and to the parent and even to the entire community anyway.
And so,
I think, Pastor, what you're saying, the English have given us a saying that you don't throw away the child.
Water.
Yeah, the child with
the bath water.
the bath water. Yes.
And Pastor Nyaga, are you seeing an instance where God is not like, I am not happy with the childbirth even process, but I'm trying to protect even the mother and the kid so that they remain, like kind of isolated or somewhere enclosed for this number of days so that, when they go out, at least they are able to bear the environment? Or what's happening?
I think as Pastor Dan said previously, many of these things we find in the Bible, though they may not make sense to us today, it was not arbitrary from God. There is always a reason behind everything that we see. And especially in the chapters we're dealing with, as we seen from chapter 11 to 17, that deals with rituals, remedies and impurities. It has a lot to do with a health status of this being. And so we will, at times we may not fully appreciate. And that's why Pastor John says science is, vindicating this process, the Bible. But of course, we cannot dismiss the cultural aspect of these people. Even before bringing in the spoken word of God to Moses to Israel through Moses, we appreciate that the Jews had a culture. Even out of this context, they had, issues of impurity and uncleanness. And culturally, a woman was unclean by the Jewish economy if she bore a girl child more than when she bore a male child.
Yeah,
God is not introducing this as a commandment. He is actually respecting their culture.
Even the culture.
Yeah, because again, God does not dismiss every culture that we are. He introduces himself within a context of people. And so he picks what people are practicing. If this is not a violation of his will, of his righteousness, he allows it to continue. And so I'm looking at this as an aspect of health. When we get to chapter 13, we'll see him talking about even the skin. And we'll come to appreciate now these days the science has come to give a name even for that which God was trying to avoid. But I'm talking on the angle of the customs, the culture, the traditions of these people. Traditionally, they held a woman unclean during impure days, and also if she gave a girl child, who would also be expected to continue, impurity in that, as it were. So she would be regarded more impure, although the child is not a lesser child than a boy child.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but let's first of all look at verse 2 especially, where the Lord says, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman has conceived and born a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean." Pastor Dan.
The customary impurity of a woman, every month, the women in their menses, their periods, they have an issue of blood. So this starts now to help us understand what the issue is. Because it says, as in. You
The
see,
days of her
it is like that's a what? It's like an equivalence, like the way she is imbiwa during her customary impurity, during her periods. So she is during childbirth. So that starts to bring the whole issue into focus. So is the issue a child here? No. The issue is not even childbirth. The issue is what happens during childbirth. So when we go, we shall get there, but we could read for a better understanding in Leviticus chapter 15.
Okay.
Yeah, Leviticus 15, it tells us about this aspect of verse 19, right? You could read there.
19. If a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening.
Yeah, and you can continue to verse 20, 21, right? Yeah.
Everything that she lies on during her impurity shall be unclean. Also everything that she sits on shall be unclean.
Right.
Whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening.
And verse 25.
25 says,
Right.
If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of her customary impurity, or if it runs beyond her usual time of impurity, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of her customary impurity. She shall be unclean.
What is the issue here? The issue is discharge. That is why verse 25 even clarifies is that if you have somebody having irregular, somebody may say that, well, my impurity is during, I normally have my periods, maybe during maybe 25th to 30th. There's an
3
average
days, 4
period.
days.
Yeah, 3-4 days. That is the only time I'm impure. But the Bible clarifies, no, it's not about those days. It is about when you are having discharge. And but it's not only for the women. We are going to read in this same chapter 15 when we get there, even men, when you're having a discharge, any bodily discharge, it signifies some kind of impurity. So we must go back to the bigger picture, what we started looking at from the chapter before, chapter 11, about cleanliness, and tie it with the whole book, holiness. God is trying to communicate something. Before we start doing, we need to be. Our being, before we go to worship him, we first need to be clean.
Okay.
So being matters much more than doing. Remember, even at the mountain, God tells them that before you come before me, you need to be clean. You need to wash yourselves. So this is very important. So the issue here is that when you give birth, there are all manner of issues, what is it? Discharges, and it's a messy, it's a beautiful, it's a process of life.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not a very beautiful
good moment.
process.
Yeah, and
right.
Pastor, what is this really? What is the problem here? Because a discharge, and I'm trying to imagine, is it about, if they are left to run around and associate with people and, they might get in contact with more dirt and that would, infections and other things? Is that what it is all about?
We will only more like speculate. But remember, God is our creator. He knows how we function. He knows the repercussions of sin. It's now said that a lot of diseases pass through discharge from the body fluids, whether it be sweat or saliva or semen or blood.
Right.
It's they're the most dangerous part of them all. When you hear somebody where, it's like hepatitis B, there is AIDS, Ebola and what have you. This come as a result of body fluids that we have. So we can assume, I will say, because this is our God we're talking about, who is more intelligent than we are. And these are the days of the Israelites. Remember, they're in the wilderness, first and foremost. No good hospitals, no modern medicine.
Heat.
Yes, the heat of it, how things grow up because of heat. So you can imagine, with all that concussions, for healthy living, it will be safe to isolate someone. Whenever somebody has Ebola, when there was a case in DRC, in Uganda, maybe in Kenya even once, there was a time like that. What happens is you are isolated until the isolation does not mean you're bad.
No.
It means it's to prevent
So just
spread
to contain the situation.
and to contain the situation, just in case something worse happens. So for me, what I'm seeing here is God was containing these people so that in case of anything, you don't want the mother being sick while the child is okay. You don't want the mother dying while the child is still alive. It will bring complications in the end. There were complications about that kind of a thing. If you read the Bible, there are very few stories of death during childbirth. Why? Because most of these things were followed in a way that it made sense to people. The modern world, I think, I was reading some news article about, there is a company here in Kenya that is giving ladies a 1 week off during their periods, because they have discovered it's something that makes you, it takes a lot of energy for ladies and something like that. Unfortunately, as a man, I may not understand that concept, but ladies will be able to understand. There are those, you cannot say take 3 days, because there are those who have 5 days,
Four,
or for 5. There are those who have heavier ones. But generally, using God's principle, 1 week would actually be enough. I'm assuming, yes, that, because I've not tested anyway, but I'm assuming that will be enough. And that means it's God considered everyone. This discharge, when you give birth in the end, there are a lot of diseases that come after childbirth, including embolism. There is embolism. There is eclampsia. Some words that I cannot even be able to explain about that can easily lead to death just by a very minute infection.
So God is really trying to contain a situation here. And in verse 3 is when he says that on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin, and on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. She shall then continue in the blood of her purification 33 days. Where am I? Okay, she shall not touch any hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purification are fulfilled. Yeah, Pastor Nyaga. So after the 7 days, when the boy is circumcised, she continues for another 33 days, and then that is now when she's free.
Yeah, I think the issue of the 8 days, is something that was introduced to God by God long ago in the book of Genesis. We can read chapter 17 of Genesis, verse number 12.
Maybe from 10.
From 10. We really appreciate from 10. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male child among you shall be circumcised. 11. And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Verse 12. He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised. Every male child in your generations, he who is born in your house or brought with money from any foreigner who is not your descendant. So God instructed that the circumcision should take place after 8 days. And so I think that is not what here in chapter 12, verse 13, God is reminding Moses, not introducing something new. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. This is in line with what God had spoken in the book of Genesis. So it was a normal practice of of Israelites. Jewish culture, they used to circumcise children after the male child after the 8th day. So then when we're looking at the issue of impurity, and we appreciate, as we have said, that we are not focusing on a child as a child being impure.
No.
These need to be very clear. I think we cannot overemphasize that it's a process. that makes even the mother impure. But we are looking at and appreciating that there was a process of dealing with this impurity. And because of that process, then we have to consider what has been practiced earlier. Like if it's a male child, then this male child has to be circumcised. So before the mother is cleansed, some of these rituals must take place. Before she is cleansed from her impurities, some of these rituals must take place. And so we are looking at, because we talk about 7 days, and then we talk about her normal, customary impurity. And so we see she is being given more days to make sure any other process and ritual that involves childbirth, and it's taken care of before she's purified.
Now, Pastor, what excites me about the text you just shared, Genesis, is how God, well in advance, there is no clash here.
Yes.
Imagine he says 8 days, the 8th day. Logically, 7 days, the mother is impure.
Yes, yeah.
So nobody can even get close to pick the child and circumcise the child. So by logic, it has to be the 8th day. How did God connect all this math? In Genesis,
Long ago.
when he gave long ago, and now it is being given here. So it tells you, the verse 3, on the 8th day, by logic, the 7 days, she is impure.
Yes.
So nothing can happen. Even those who will carry out the rite of circumcision, they can't, because a command had been given early. I just love God.
Now on the 8th day,
Right.
they are free to do it.
They're free now, they can access.
That's very great. Let's first of all take a short break, and of course when we resume, we continue the same discussion, especially from verse 5. So don't go away, we are coming back shortly.